Hi, I'm Jeff with Ovation, and in this video, we're going to talk about just some various settings that you might find useful when using the Ovation software at your organization. I'm going to more or less jump through these randomly, but try to get you context for why you might care about these things. So when you sign into the Ovation software, you're going to see this main menu here in front of you. On the left-hand side is where you would choose the mode that you plan to practice with, and then enter the venue and begin practicing. But before we do that, I want to point out some of these buttons on the right-hand side of the menu. So first up is Settings. If I click into Settings, you're going to see some tabs along the top of the menu. But first, we're in the General Settings. And here's where you would be able to, for example, change the menu style. If you maybe have color blindness, or you want something that's a little more or less contrasty, you could do that here. You could change the size of the menu, or you could just change the font size. So there's a variety of options in there. You can adjust your height. Now I'm using Ovation in the monitor mode right now, so I could maybe bump this up to my actual height in the real world, and it's going to look like that now inside the virtual world. If you're in virtual reality, you wouldn't need to do this. You would have calibrated outside of Ovation, and then when you are inside Ovation, we take that calibration value and you're just the height that you are in the real world. You can come into the height setting, by the way, in VR, and you can put yourself in what's called sitting mode or standing mode, where you can sit in the real world with the VR headset on, which I highly recommend you do, but you can feel like you're standing in the virtual world. So that gives you the opportunity to be more comfortable while you're using Ovation in VR, while you're seated, but still feel like in the virtual world you're standing. So you can experiment with that. If you want to change your language, so if you want to speak in a different language during a speech, conversation, or interview, and you want the audience members to speak back to you in that language, you would click here. And you could choose from one of, I believe we now have 22 supported languages in the software. And so just pick any of these and you're able to speak in it, and they're going to speak back to you in the same language. So that's some of the main stuff here. There's lots of other settings, but I'll let you explore in your own time. Next up is Avatar. Here's where you would go to either enter a code that you would have gotten if you generated your own custom avatar, or you can select from one of Ovation's 12 included avatars. So it's just a small list here that you can select from, or you can customize your own. You would create it at ovation.readyplayer.me, and then you'd go to that website, you'd customize your avatar, select the shirt you're wearing and your hairstyle and all the rest of it, and they give you a 6-digit code, and you would enter it in right here. And then your avatar on the right-hand side would look like you. Next up is, we're in monitor mode here, so it's giving me how-to instructions for using the software in monitor mode. And this is very useful to come in here, and if you forgot how to do something, or you want to learn how to move around or anything like that, there's instructions for all of that inside this menu. And then next up is your account. This is what you're signed in. If you want to sign out and sign in as a different account, you can do that here. If Ovation typically logs a user out for inactivity, so if you don't touch the mouse or change menus or anything for a while, it's going to sign you out of the software to free up your license for other people at your organization to use. But if you don't want that behavior to happen, if you want Ovation to stay signed in, you would just click this stopwatch here, and now that inactivity timer has been turned off. If you're using Ovation in VR, you're also going to need to change a setting inside the Meta Quest home settings, and that is the sleep timer. So when you take the headset off, it's going to give you about 15 seconds before it cuts the Wi-Fi and a lot of processes going on in the headset to save battery. That will also cause you to sign out of Ovation, and it shuts down and maybe sign you out of a multiplayer session if you're in one. And so you have the option to go into the meta settings and change that sleep timer to be much longer. That way it's not going to cause that to happen, and you can stay signed into Ovation and stay in a multiplayer session. I just recommend that you keep the headset plugged into power, because when it's not in sleep mode, it's going to use a lot more battery. Okay, so that's some of the primary settings here. Next up is the Manage menu. So whenever you practice in Ovation, you create a recording, we call them. So whether it's a speech, a conversation, or an interview, and you save that, it's going to save that to your account. And so you can go into the Manage menu, and you can look at some of the speeches, conversations, interviews that you've given, and you can review them again. So if I were to, for example, click on this, I can choose to review that. It would take me to the review menu. I'd be able to look at the transcript, the AI feedback that I got previously, and I'd even be able to play back that recording in Ovation so I could watch it. And if I just click that, you'll see here's my previous interview that I gave in another video. The management menu also has any imported documents. You can sign into the Ovation website, and you can upload PowerPoint files, Word documents, PDFs, TXT files. And when you upload them, they're going to be streamed to your headset or to your software when you sign in, and then you can load them, and they'll show up on various objects here in the virtual world. And here's also where you would see them. So you'd be able to just click on one of them and then load it. And then it also shows you the prompts that are in the software. So you can think of prompts as the topics you might have before a speech starts. You can create your own on Ovation's website, and Ovation comes with a couple hundred of them. If you ever make any changes on the website while you're already signed into the software, so for example, if I were to just go on a different screen here, go to ovationvr.com, sign into this account, and then upload a PowerPoint file, in order for me to then see that PowerPoint file here, while I'm signed in, I would need to click this refresh button here. If I click this, it's going to send that from the cloud to my session here, and then I'd be able to load that file. So that's the Manage menu. The Meet menu is where you would go to start a multiplayer session. So in Ovation, you need to know the other people that you're going to invite to your multiplayer session. There's no sort of matchmaking in the software, but you would just click Start a new multiplayer session. It's going to request a server, and then it's going to load that for you. And once it's successfully done that, you'll come back here. Your multiplayer session is now active. And so this screen looks a little different. From here, you would then be able to enter the username or the email of the person that you want to bring into your multiplayer session with you. If you're an organization, you're going to be able to click this Save Usernames thing and see all of the accounts that are within your organization. So you don't necessarily need to type in their username or email. You could just search that list for another member account in your organization. On the left-hand side, you can view the participants that are in this multiplayer session, and this would open their particular user menu. And from there, you'd be able to, for example, set their role. Now, role is important. There's a speaker, a coach, or a spectator role. When you're a speaker, the software expects you to speak during the speech, the interview, the conversation. You're going to get trained. You're going to get the training warnings during the recording, and you're also going to get the feedback at the end on the review menu. If you're a coach, the audience is not going to look at you. You're not going to be trained during the recording, and you're not going to get any AI feedback. As a coach, you're there to support the speaker in that multiplayer session. And then finally, the spectator role is a role where you don't really have any control over the world. You can't change venues. You can't start or stop the session or the speech or the recording. You can't really do much of anything. You can't change a slide. The audience is not looking at you. You're essentially just more or less a ghost in the world, and you're spectating. You're observing the speaker practice. Here you can mute or unmute yourself. Now, going back to this menu here, the participants audio manager. Now, this is important. In organizations, particularly in universities, they will have a multiplayer session where the two people in the multiplayer session are in the same room together. They're right next to each other. So someone might be in a VR headset and another person is next to them on a laptop using Ovation on their computer. And one of the things you want to be aware of is you're going to be able to hear each other in the real world, and you're going to be able to hear each other in Ovation, because Ovation is sending the audio to the different multiplayer participants so you can hear everyone. If that's the case, if you're in a real world room with someone who you're in a multiplayer session with, you can come into the audio manager here and you can change it so that you both are in the same room, this thing here. So if I changed this to 1, then if there was another participant in here, you would see their row in this table here, and you would also set them to room 1. And what that does is it'll mute them relative to one another, but other people in the multiplayer session who may not actually be in that real world room with them would still be able to hear them through Ovation. So I hope that was clear. It's a very useful setting. And keep that in mind if you're an organization. Okay, I'm going to go back to the main menu here. And the review menu is simply going to pull back up the review menu where I loaded the, in this case, the interview previously. So those are the 4 things on the right-hand side of the menu here. You can also access your own user menu just by clicking this button up here. And it's similar to how I went through that in the Meet menu there. Okay, that's it for this video. Thank you, and see you in the next one.